everyone. Thanks for joining us. I am Steph. This is Lisa, and we are PD Connect. We are waiting for Dr. Laurie Mischley. She will be here shortly, but in the meantime, we're going to give you a little rundown as to who we are and what we do. So thank you for joining us. To our new friends, and for our friends that we already know, thanks for coming and always supporting us. Okay, go ahead, Lisa.
We have been waiting for a really long time for this meeting today, and we booked this like months and months ago, actually like over a year ago when we met Dr. Mischley. We've known her for how long? I don't know.
Yeah, a couple years now.
A couple of years, yeah. If you have any questions, we can put the questions into the chat. We're not good. We have over 150 people registered, so it's going to be too much to have people unmute themselves and ask questions. So please stay muted and put your question into the chat if you have any questions for Dr. Mischley. While we're waiting for her, I'd like to just show you, we are PD Connect, for those of you who don't know who we are, and we made this tiny little video to show you a little bit about what we do and what we do actually in class and what we have done, not just what we do right now, but what we have done in class. So let's share that right here. Every single day, I'm gonna make something great. That's my way. Every single day, I'm gonna make something great. That's my way. Let's do that acceleration at the end. Come on, guys. First.
Okay, thanks for watching that, guys. So if you know us, you must know that we are thrilled to have all of you. Thank you for joining us. We are excited for you guys to meet Dr. Laurie Mischley. We just said we've known her for a little while here, and we're very excited for you guys to get to know her and ask her questions. So let me just tell you, Dr. Laurie Mischley has a BS in nutrition science from Penn State University. She became a doctor of naturopathic medicine at Bastyr University. She has a PhD in nutrition from the University of Washington and an MPH in epidemiology from the University of Washington. Every time I've heard her speak, we've heard her speak, I learned something new from her.
Wait, can I just say that all of that, what that means is she's really smart.
Yes,
like genius.
She's super smart. Anyway, so every time I hear her speak, I learn something new. So if this is not the first time you've heard her speak, then this is going to be mind-blowing, right? Or it is mind-blowing already. But if this is the first time, take lots of notes, but watch her again, guys. She's amazing every time I hear her. Anyway, we also got the opportunity to work with her at PD Summer School, and we hope to do so again whenever that may be. But it's great. I have lots of things to say. But anyway, let's get on to camp here and what that's all about.
Yeah, anyway, actually, I think I see is
I'm here.
Oh,
hi.
you are. Where are you? Let's see.
Maybe I'm hiding.
Well, you're on page 8, maybe.
It could be. Anyway, Dr. Laurie Mischley is here, guys.
She's here.
We're super stoked. We thought she was going to be a couple more minutes late. Oh, there she is. I find her.
Ah. Okay,
Where's
so
Mischley?
what we need to do is take off our spotlight.
Okay.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
Spotlight her.
Yep, that's right. Okay. Okay, so we are going to remain muted now, and Dr. Laurie is in charge here. Okay, and got it?
Where did she go again?
We lost her again.
Oh, there she is.
She's wearing yellow.
All right.
You should be able to find me in this shirt.
Yeah, look at that. Oh, keep the glasses.
The rose-colored glasses.
Well, they're my reading glasses, and you're just far enough away that I can't tell which is better.
Awesome. We have a poll too.
Yeah, we have a poll if you'd like to.
Okay.
We haven't done the poll. We haven't done anything, actually. We just did the intro, so.
Oh, okay. So I've been on for most of it. You just, because I was on mute, you didn't see me. So I'm going to start talking about the cam care where you guys kind of left off. I would love to start with the poll, because when I was thinking about what I wanted to do with our session today, my assumption was everybody who's on here has probably heard me speak at least once before. And I really don't want to just kind of say more of what you've already heard. So can we just start with the poll? How many of you have never heard me speak before? Or how, can you, do I do that poll or do you do that?
You can do it if you want.
I don't, how?
Okay, I'll do it.
You do it, please.
Here we go, launch.
Okay, so guys, do you guys see that poll? Go ahead and fill out that poll there. The first question, hopefully you can see it. Have you ever heard Dr. Laurie speak? Okay.
And let me just, yeah, you can answer that one, but let me just tell you what I'm thinking for number 2. Is for number 2, we can go through the routine research. I can tell you the research project I've been working on, and I really am sitting on a bunch of really relevant information about things that you can do to slow Parkinson's progression, or things that you might be able to do, might be doing that accelerate Parkinson's progression. And I can kind of go over the whole thing, give you the summary. But what I'd really like to do, and I'm a little nervous now that I see this is being recorded, is I just got all of the updated food data for 2021. And I have a new and improved food list that is foods associated with faster and slower progression, specifically of the non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease. And it will be officially released in 2021. But I was wondering if we could use this group for me to kind of give you guys a sneak peek of what the new data is going to look like, and use this as an opportunity to get your feedback and where are people going to freak out and what makes sense to you and things like that. So about half and half have heard me, so I will absolutely do a little overview introduction. And it's about half and half in terms of whether we want the overview. Okay, so I'm
gonna end the poll here.
End the poll. I see the spread.
Okay.
Did it do it?
Here it goes.
Oh, okay.
All right.
All right.
So we can share the results, or do you want to share the results here?
No. Oh, other people couldn't see what just happened with that?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh yeah, if you want to share what happened, yeah, so about half and half have heard me before, and half want me to just go through the general introduction overview, and half want a sneak peek at what's to come and look at the new and improved list. So I think I'm gonna try and do it all, because I think that's what's most valuable. So along the lines of CAM, CARE, and PD, I did not prepare a PowerPoint. I'm kind of sick of them. I've been watching a lot of them. I've been doing a lot of them, and I wanted to really be more available to do Q&A. I'm seeing some questions already starting to come in. I like that style. But for those of you who don't know me, I am both a clinician and a epidemiologist and a clinical trialist. I do research related to Parkinson's disease. And as Steph said, my PhD and most of my academic work has to do with nutritional science. Specifically, are there nutritional strategies associated with slower progression of Parkinson's disease? Are there things that you can modify in your lifestyle that will result in improved outcomes over time? And so just to kind of go back and kind of give a brief overview, one of the problems that we have had in Parkinson's disease is we don't have a good outcome measure to measure disease. You know, the outcome measure we use for most of our clinical trials is not all that clinically relevant, and there are a whole bunch of reasons it doesn't work to give us the answers that we want. And so one of the first things I had to do was build a new rating scale that was more sensitive to change, and that's called the PRO-PD. Anybody for free can go right now and get their score. It's called PROPD.org. We'll post some links to it. Maybe someone can type the link in the chat box or something like that. But it's PROPD.org. It takes about 5 minutes. And what it is it's 33 common symptoms of Parkinson's disease. And you just answer, on average, over the last week, how severe have these symptoms been? And the goal, a cure, would be you go through that list and everything's a 0. right? We'd all be happy if the answer was 0. If you say, in the last week, I have not been constipated, I have not moved slowly, I've had no trouble rising from a seated position, my bowels have been working fabulously, I'm getting a great night's sleep, that would be a score 0. And if you were absolutely debilitated, the worst it could possibly be, your score would be 3,300. And the patient doesn't see a number. They just kind of say, ish, it's about that, about a third of the way down the bar. So you guys can fill it out really quickly, but on the back end, we get this very finely tuned continuous outcome measure. And so that ended up being way, way, way better than we expected it would be. And so we have now published and showed that the PRO-PD matches the normal measures that like you would expect, the quality of life measures, which are most important, the motor symptom, Hoehn-Yahr, UPDRS. And so now that we've kind of validated that measure, we put it to use, asking the question, are there things that you can change to get better or worse results? So I'm going to share my screen. So we are currently have about 2,400 people right now in the database. I am asking all of you to please consider donating an hour to hour and a half of your time, and sometime in the next day or two, please join the study if you aren't already in the study. The more people who join, the more clarity we get in the data. I'm going to tell you that wine is associated with slower progression, and all of you are going to raise your hand and say red or white. But I can't answer that question until more of you join the study, right? And so we are getting, now that we know wine's good, we can look a little deeper in the wine area. And so the more people who join, the more detailed answers we can give you. So if you, let me just share my screen here. Okay, so this is the website that is kind of the cheat sheet summary page for everything that we are learning. I think there are about 1,500 people are reflected in this current data set. And so if you want to make, all of these are one-page handouts that you can print out, you can hang them on your refrigerator, you can bring them to your support group meetings, you can email them to your friends. But each one of these is a one-page handout that you can download. And I just want to kind of show you what we're finding. So this is kind of the latest and greatest 2020 rendition interpretation of what the data says. So let's start with the physical activity one, because I know I can't see myself anymore. So is that okay? Can you see me either?
Yeah,
Yes.
We can still see you.
And the screen.
And the print.
Screen.
And the
Okay.
PowerPoint, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Is there a way for me to be able to see myself a little too? Okay, there we go. Okay. So the first thing that this says is that in general, people who are overweight tend to be more symptomatic than people who are not overweight. The rate at which they seem to be accumulating new symptoms does not seem to be better or worse. It seems to be about stable, but across the board, people who are overweight tend to be more symptomatic. What these data down here say is we asked on how many of the last 7 days did you do at least 30 minutes of exercise? And what these data say is more is better. People who did 7 days a week of exercise were literally better off than people who did 6 days a week. People who said they did 6 days a week were better than people who did 5. And so more is better. And it looks like the first 2 days a week that you do 30 minutes of exercise, while they're good for you, they're not statistically significant. They don't really make a meaningful difference. It doesn't appear. It looks like the real benefit starts with 3 days a week or more. In terms of types of exercise, jury's still out on this. This next round of CAM care surveys that people are currently filling out, we're in the middle of a big recruitment push right now. And one of the things that we have gone out of our way to do for this version of the study is to take a much closer look at exercise intensity, frequency, different types of exercise, exercising alone or with a companion, as part of a class. And so from what we can tell here, and this was a very crude look at the data, running and yoga were the two forms of exercise that came in number 1 and 2. But what I really love is other. If you notice, I tell people just find something that you're going to do that you enjoy doing. It doesn't matter if it's, one-legged gardening or whatever that's going to be. It looks like anybody who is carving out time for exercise specific to your needs is getting some benefit. And so, and I have reason to question these data. I hear every day in clinic, rock steady boxing is something people really appreciate. They like the community, they feel better, their gait is improving. These data did not suggest a huge improvement associated with rock steady boxing in terms of slowing progression. And we're trying to figure out why that is. Maybe it's more symptomatic than disease modifying. Maybe there just weren't enough people in the study to be able to give us the results, accurate results. We don't know. So I'm hoping to get some clarity here. The one that most people are excited to talk about is this one. This is the role of nutrition and Parkinson's disease progression. First thing I want to draw your attention to is our dietary behaviors associated with different rates of Parkinson's progression. Financial insecurity is one of the biggest threats to living well with Parkinson's. In all of the data in this entire study, hundreds and hundreds of questions, being poor and being lonely are two of the biggest risk factors for progression, and that translates over to food. Food scarcity is a really big problem. People have trouble affording food, and they especially have trouble affording healthy food, and that is associated with faster Parkinson's progression. Alternatively, people who say, I cook most of my own meals, I avoid artificial sweeteners, I avoid artificial colors and flavors, I routinely prepare meals for others, I try to eat organically grown food when possible, and I buy from local farmers, like co-ops and farmers markets and things like that, are all doing better. And it's not that I think that there's some magical power to broccoli that comes from the farmers market over the conventional grocery store. There might be different nutrient profiles or something like that, but I do think it speaks to the fact that people who are mindful and thoughtful about where their food is coming from might actually have a slower rate of progression. It's one of the problems with this research project is even though I can tell you who the successful people are and what they're eating, we can't tell you anything about why this might be working or not working. So this is what most people want to know. Is there something I can do? Can I change my diet and change my outcomes? And we don't know yet. But what we do know is when we look at 1,500 people with Parkinson's disease, the people who are doing the best 10 and 20 years after their diagnosis are the people who are eating the most fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, nuts and seeds, non-fried fish, wine, olive oil, coconut oil, fresh herbs. Those are the foods that are associated with the slowest progression over time. What I'm not actually supposed to tell you yet is that the new data also includes spices, green tea, black tea, eggs, and frozen fruit are all looking like they are going to be on the 2021 list of protective good foods. The foods that are associated with progression. So the way I tell people to think about this, imagine that you are in a car in neutral on a hill that is very, very slowly going downhill. If you do nothing, you're just going to slowly go downhill. So what these data say is that the more canned fruit, diet soda, fried food, ice cream, canned vegetables, beef, pasta, soda, drinking out of plastic bottles, chicken, pork, frozen vegetables, yogurt, cheese, and milk a person consumes, the faster their disease, the faster downhill they go. I tell my patients it's like putting your foot on the gas pedal of degeneration. It just kind of accelerates the rate at which you develop new symptoms. So the way I listed that makes it a little hard to see. So we're basically talking dairy, right? Milk, cheese, yogurt, ice cream. The next list will have butter. Canned fruits and canned vegetables, soda, fried foods, that kind of makes sense. Beef, chicken, and pork are all on this list. Drinking out of plastic bottles, eating out of cans will be on the next list. Pasta's on this one. Bread will be on the next list. Bread will be added next year. Frozen vegetables are a little bit confusing to me, but we have some ideas starting to come in about why frozen vegetables may be associated with faster progression, but frozen fruit is associated with slower progression. Again, the data might be that the sample does not reflect the real world. It might be that something's happening in the preparation of frozen vegetables or where they're coming from. And I think that's it for, and juice is the new updated one for the 2021 list. Juice will also be added to the bad list. So what I would really like to do is kind of, I'm going to talk about the last one too about social health, but I would really like to come back and save some time during this talk to hear your feedback about this list, whether this is overwhelming, whether it is exciting that you think you might have some control, that this is empowering. Tell me where you foresee problems. I mean, I'm trying to find a way to anticipate people's response to these new updated data. And I would really like, how can I say this? I have an opportunity over these next 2 months while we are crunching the data to do different types of analyses that right now, like we can look at wine and look at red versus white now that more people are starting to enroll in this study. So one thing I'd really like to do with today's time that we have is hear your feedback on that. And then the last thing that I want to make sure that I just talk about before I dive into questions is perhaps one of the most important parts of my career so far. With these data, we, like I said, took a step back and said, you know, beyond food and exercise, what are the variables associated with faster Parkinson's progression or slower? And what we have learned, like I said, is low income brackets and loneliness are two of the greatest threats to living well with Parkinson's disease. And so what we're seeing here is up in this right-hand corner. What this says is across the board. This blue line is when we ask people year after year during the first 10 years following diagnosis, how are you, right? How severely do you rate your Parkinson's symptoms? And then later in the survey, we ask, are you lonely? It's a true false section. And the statement is, I am lonely. And you say true or false. The people who say false to that statement, the blue line is their score year after year. When people answer true to this statement, I am lonely, they're about 40% more symptomatic than people who are not lonely across the board. In every single symptom, all 33 symptoms, people who are lonely rate their symptom as worse. And so I think that that actually has a ton of implications, not just for your social lives, but how we study medicines and the questions we ask in clinical trials and what we adjust for, and you know, what clinicians can start focusing on in clinic. There's this whole thing called social prescribing, where it's not just about joining a book club or working out with some friends. They're actually getting people volunteering in the community. Seems to be actually an impressive antidote to loneliness, is being helpful to somebody else. What we learned is that people who say I am lonely are on average about 328 points worse off than people who are not lonely. Looked at another way, being lonely is as bad for you as being as exercising 7 days a week is good for you. That is a tremendous impact on disease progression. Imagine how hard it is to find the discipline and the drive to work out 7 days a week. All of that can be, you know, that is almost taken away by being lonely. And I do think that loneliness is something that I consider a modifiable variable. I know some people hear that, and it's if you live alone, if you feel isolated, you're socially an introvert, you feel isolated. Some people can find that statistic depressing and threatening, maybe. And I guess the point I want to drive home is I actually think loneliness is tremendously modifiable. I think there are a million different ways we can reach out and be helpful in the community, even if it's not a social bubble, even during COVID times. And so we can come back to that if you guys want to talk about that. But I just want to drive home the importance of social health here. And, you know, I think this graph also says a lot. So what this is we asked about people's tremor intensity. These are people who have very, very, very mild tremor to, you know, moderately severe tremor. And what this shows is tremor has virtually no bearing on somebody's quality of life. Whether or not you have no tremor, a small tremor, or fairly severe tremor, that does not actually predict whether you will tell us that your quality of life is poor or excellent. What does matter is whether or not you say you're lonely. People who say they are lonely are much, much more likely to have a low quality of life, whereas people who say true to the statement, I have a lot of friends, are much more likely to have a high, excellent quality of life. So I think what I want to do is just kind of stop screen sharing for a minute and come back and kind of look at some of the questions. It's hard for me to give a talk like this when I can't see people's facial expressions, and when I'm hearing dings, I can't tell if people are coming on or leaving because they're fed up with what I'm saying. So,
do you want me to take you off of the spotlight and you can see everyone, or?
No, this is good. I think I can adjust it. Just while I was looking at the screen.
Yeah.
So let me just start going through the list of questions. And I don't know if there's a way, let me go through the list of questions, but maybe I can, is there a way to take everyone off? Will that be mayhem if we take people off mute and people just talk? Or
yeah, we would love to do that. Well, we can't unmute everyone at the same time anymore. Zoom won't let us do that. And it is pretty chaotic is the only problem. If there's background noise, people walking in and out of rooms, it's kind of, we do have 130 people on. So
okay,
we could definitely try it and then mute everyone if that's a better idea. Or
well, let me go through the list of questions. Anyone who has a question, type it in, and anyone who wants to unmute themselves and offer up some ideas or opinions, I'm welcoming that. So what about goat cheese and milk? So it is going to be a decade minimum before we can answer questions about goat cheese and buffalo cheese and camel cheese. And I get all those questions all the time. And so my opinion is it is probably the same. We don't know if it's the fat, the protein, we don't, you know, the breast milk of other mammals probably does not belong in an adult human's intestinal tract. I think we're introducing the wrong microbiome by drinking the breast milk of other animals. And my advice, in the absence of data, my advice is avoid all mammalian breast milk. About zinc supplementation, I think there may be some value to zinc for COVID protection, and there are a couple supplements that I think are somewhat relevant to people with Parkinson's in COVID times, and zinc would probably be on that list, but it is not a recommendation that I routinely make for people with Parkinson's disease. If someone's high in copper or something, that might be an exception, but that would be rare that I would recommend zinc for Parkinson's. Food list would be good. So living healthy with Parkinson's is the whole list is there for all of you to print out. And I told you the foods that will be added for 2021. Same thing with kefir. So here's another thing that I'm probably should not be reporting just yet, but it's this. We have new data ourselves that are backing up data that was presented at the World Parkinson's Congress that suggests that people with Parkinson's disease, we know you have messed up intestinal flora, right? That is clear. According to the data presented at World Parkinson Congress and according to our data, it's messed up in the direction, not the direction you think. people with Parkinson's already have way too much lactobacillus, bifidobacter. The things that you guys have growing out of control are not the same bugs that, you know, usually people need after a course of antibiotics. And so there are so many millions of organisms in our intestinal tract. It is way too it's just too early in our understanding of the microbiome to kind of be arrogant enough to think that of the 5 million bugs we just found in people's intestinal tract, we know which 4 are causing the problem or need to be supplemented. My concern is that people are drinking kefir and what's the other, kombucha and things like that, and they're seeding their gut with things, microbiome, probiotics that they think are healthy, but it actually may be doing more harm than good, is what our data is pointing towards right now. People with Parkinson's disease are more likely to be B12 deficient. B12 is the #1 nutritional deficiency in elderly people over the age of 60. The stomach lining with age is not very, becomes atrophied and stops doing its job. And that stomach lining has 3 major jobs. It makes stomach acid, it allows you to absorb your B12, and it makes 50% of your body's dopamine. And so with age, that starts failing a lot of you guys. About 60% of people with Parkinson's don't make enough stomach acid. There's some reason, a couple studies suggest that levodopa might actually interfere with B12 uptake a little bit. We're not really sure about that. But just being elderly alone, and especially having Parkinson's disease, are risk factors for B12 deficiency. And people with Parkinson's who have low B12 or high homocysteine have a faster progressing disease. They tend to have worse outcomes over time. So once a year, I test all of my patients' B12 levels, and in my class, I don't know if these folks, everyone knows about an online class that I'm teaching. There's a whole 30-minute discussion about how do you rule out a B12 deficiency in the, and we can direct you to that. But for right now, I'll just say a serum B12 is not enough. For someone to be able to say, I am not deficient in B12, they have to have adequate B12, a low homocysteine, and a low methylmalonic acid. And if you have all 3 of those things are normal, then you can say B12 is not my problem. But if you haven't had all 3 of those tests, it might be. Any way to improve low blood sugar or low blood pressure? So minerals and water are definitely 2 of the best things that you can do. You know, I'm writing a chapter right now on non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease and different nutritional strategies. And I'm actually really surprised at how many papers actually recommend before meal or before exercising, actually drinking a ½ liter of water with some minerals or electrolytes in it when you eat your food, salt it pretty heavily, and just kind of these basic steps of staying well hydrated and actually going out of your way to drink a little extra water before you're going to need more blood pressure, like before exercise or before a meal, can kind of offset some of that low blood pressure that will pop up occasionally. I am not taking advantage of the California registry for my polling, and I don't know how to do that. And if somebody could find that mailing list for me, that would be fabulous. Freezing of gait, you know, that's a tough one. I'd say I'm going to skip that one because there's a whole conversation about making your medicines last longer and work better. What I can do too is I bet you I can make a coupon to get, in the online Parkinson's school, we have the second class is an entire class called Making Your Medicines Last Longer and Work Better. And where freezing of gait can kind of come if we can, one of the first places I'll do is just work on making people's meds work a little better. And there are a lot of, I feel like Lisa and Steph have better tricks for freezing of gait than some of the lifestyle modification stuff that I do. Yes, I'm familiar with mucuna. It is a natural form of levodopa. It's basically just like identical to the carbidopa levodopa preparation that you get at the pharmacy, except it does not have the carbidopa. there are some pros and some cons to it. One, because it is an herb. The pro is that it's got, 100 other molecules in it that might all be working together. Mucuna does not just have levodopa, it has CoQ10 and NADH and a bunch of other, it has glutathione in it. It has these other things that might all work synergistically with it and make it work better. In head-to-head trials, it actually is very effective at treating symptoms and actually a little bit smoother than levodopa pharmaceutical. However, it's more expensive. It's not covered by insurance. Batch to batch, it varies. Different companies and different brands vary quite significantly. And what happens is, for the first year, 2 or 3, a lot of people could probably get away with mucuna instead of pharmaceutical levodopa. However, later in the disease, as you need more and more levodopa, what ends up happening is the amount of mucuna you would need to take is enough to make you sick. It will become toxic. And so that carbidopa that we add to levodopa really truly does do what it's supposed to do in terms of allowing you to take lower doses of levodopa without getting sick. So I tend to favor pharmaceutical carbidopa levodopa personally to mucuna, but for people who are really nervous or afraid to start meds, mucuna is a great place to start. Eggs are going to be on the good list next time. I think that's something people are pretty excited about. It looks like eggs are protective against Parkinson's progression. The people doing best over time seem to be eating more eggs. My advice is don't fry them. I worry about eggs oxidizing. If you're going to cooking them underwater is great. Poaching, soft boiling, hard boiling is great. You don't have to worry about oxidizing the fats and proteins at all. But if you are going to cook them on the stove top, I'd say keep the temperature low. Slow and low is how you want to cook things. You don't want to heat things up too high. Maybe the people who feel better exercise more, cause and effect. It might be. It might be. So that's an interesting point about, so the statement on here is that it might not be that exercise makes people progress slower, but that people who progress slower are more likely to exercise. And that may be true. What's exciting about the 2021 data is we now have some statisticians on the team who are capable of taking full advantage of the data set, and some of our 2021 data will actually speak to causation, not just association, and that's going to be pretty exciting when that happens. So stay tuned for the official word on what is cause and effect. But what I will say is I don't care. My goal is not to tell you the mechanism by which exercise slows Parkinson's progression. I don't really care. All I care about is 30 years, 40 years after diagnosis, you say, my quality of life is excellent and I hardly have any symptoms. It doesn't matter if your exercise makes you think you don't have any symptoms, or if you don't have any symptoms so you are more able to exercise. Doesn't really matter as long as you are a couple decades out post-diagnosis and have no symptoms and your quality of life is excellent. I'm happy, right? Is resistance training worthwhile? I will know after a whole bunch of you enroll in this study. Tell all of your friends to enroll in this study, and we analyze this new updated exercise data set in November and December. So right now in September, we are doing this huge recruitment push, and the more people we can get to enroll this month, the better. And so in September and October, we're trying to get as close to 5,000 as we can, because that will give us the power to be able to ask, do you need to have exercise intensity for 10 minutes or does it have to be 30? I mean, and we will only be able to answer that level of detail about resistance and how you work out if a whole bunch of people enroll in this study over the next month or two. The analysis will start in November. Right, anyone who can run, right. So people who are with late stage Parkinson's, 45 years into their disease, may not be in a position to run. But I will tell you, when we did the analysis, what we did is we compared people diagnosed 15 years ago, like 2 women, both diagnosed 15 years ago. the person who says she's running in the same income bracket, the person who is running is doing better than the person who's not running, even after adjusting for Hone and Yar stages and different. We tried to even out the comparisons to the extent that we could. There's a bunch of conversations about cause and effect. And so I think that's maybe something that we should come back to in terms of, if the statisticians next year clearly demonstrate that, so the advantage of longitudinal data, like it's great if you all go and fill this survey out once, right? We just get a snapshot and we say, look he's doing well and he exercises. Therefore, it looks like people who are doing well exercise. That snapshot is called a cross-sectional study, and that's what I've done, and that's very valuable. What I've been collecting, though, is data over the last 7 years on the same people. And what we can do now is show that people who used to not exercise but started exercising changed the course of their disease. People who used to eat cheeseburgers and milkshakes and changed their diet to Mediterranean-like are slowing Parkinson's progression. And so now that we have a more statistically competent team coming together, we will be able to speak a little bit more accurately about how much of this stuff is association and what is actually cause and effect. But I am excited to publish this next round of paper, because it's very clear that some of this is more than just a loose association. People are asking about pasta. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what pasta means. Is it processed grains? Is it gluten? People want to know about corn pasta and quinoa pasta. And again, we are just have enough people enrolled in this study to be able to find a difference, find that people who eat pasta are here. This next round of research, when you say, yes, I eat pasta, we'll have a drop-down menu. And you answer, is it gluten pasta? Is it rice pasta? Is it quinoa pasta? Is it organic, from Italy, fortified with iron, not? Now that we know that pasta is associated, we can start to answer some of your questions for you. And it's you asking these questions that tells us what to put on the survey. I mean, this survey was designed for you. It's to tell you who are the success stories and what are they doing differently. So your feedback has actually been what has informed this study so far. Hey, Rebecca, the list does include sugar, but it's not statistically significant. Whether you eat sugar or not does not seem to be associated with faster or slower progression. It is considered neutral. Rice and beans, same thing. Rice and beans and whole grains, we do ask about them on the survey. They are neutral. They are not helpful or harmful. They just seem to not do much about anything. Yes, I tell people non-dairy cheese and non-dairy ice cream are fine. If you want coconut bliss, coconut-based ice cream, or the plant-based soy alternatives, I think that's fine. Cashew gurt, I've been eating a lot of cashew gurt in the morning. Canned beans, so we ask a couple questions about, certainly canned fruits, canned vegetables, and then there's another question about I eat out of a can, and that is even taking income into account. Even between two people who both make under $40,000 a year, the person who's eating out of more cans is doing worse than the person who's eating fresh. So the next survey, the one that is currently running right now, is asking about canned tuna and canned beans, are questions I get a lot. And so if enough of you fill out the survey in the next month or so, we should be able to answer that question in 2021 for you. Influence of food based on how it's prepared. I am sure, we see that with fried food versus fresh. Even freezing it might be making a difference. So that leaves, there's a lot of research that has to be done. Michael, how much wine is okay? Our data says more is better. So I guess, breakfast if you get started. No, I'm just teasing. I'm going to stick with the, 1 glass a day for women, 2 for men. Most people with Parkinson's actually lose their taste for alcohol more often than not. I don't find too many people with Parkinson's having much trouble with alcohol. Honestly, it makes people feel worse. Even people who drank throughout their life and enjoyed alcohol will often say that their tolerance to it is diminished. They feel pretty bad after a glass of wine. They sleep worse. They don't feel as good the next day. So I don't find overconsumption to be a huge problem, but I would not recommend going above 2 glasses of wine for a whole bunch of health reasons. The canned food, Scott, could be, yes, the toxicologist with whom I've consulted about this think it could be, the question is why what's the association with canned food? It could be the BPA, bisphenol A in the lining. It could be the metals in the can, or somebody else suggested that it's the foods that are most heavily sprayed with pesticides that wind up in cans. And so it could be something along those lines. I've been trying to get, and I'm a food snob, right? When I saw those data, my first thought was, good thing I never eat green beans out of a can, right? I would, and then the more I started to think about it, I eat Thai food. I do take out Thai food all the time, right? The coconut milk is all coming in a can. If I'm making chili, the stewed tomatoes or tomato paste or something that I use comes in a can. The beans will come in a can. And I started, when I go to the store and buy pineapple juice, I used to get the stuff that came in a can. And I was like, I guess that is canned fruit. And as you start paying attention, you realize that these things sneak into your life more than you realize. So we don't know what it is. So your neurologist says everything in moderation. Great. Like crack? Like you should only smoke crack in moderation? That doesn't make sense. I mean, if we know that water has manganese in it, to only consume that manganese laden water in moderation doesn't make sense. I mean, the whole point of this research is would a endocrinologist tell a person with diabetes, go ahead and eat sugar in moderation? I mean, if you are a general person without a disease, I think a healthy, kind of what the data suggests to be the most healthy diet for the most people is kind of this plant-based Mediterranean-esque diet is the diet that seems to be associated with preventing Parkinson's, preventing Alzheimer's disease, preventing cardiovascular disease, right? The data kind of suggests the more fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, nuts and seeds, fish, eggs, whole grains, olive oil a person eats, the better they tend to do. If your neurologist is saying everything in moderation, go and have a Diet Coke every once in a while, a couple times a week, no big deal. I mean, I just don't know where that line, that's not my opinion. I think if there's something that is if a smoker develops lung cancer, I wouldn't say smoke tobacco in moderation. I'd say, sorry, you burned that bridge, time to change your lifestyle and stop using tobacco, right? And so I think the data, we now have enough data to make more concrete recommendations than just this general eat well and exercise sort of thing, come back in a couple of months. Food deserts. So someone says people who eat fried food and canned food may live in food deserts. And that could absolutely be part of the problem. Again, we don't know mechanism, but I think that it does, I do think that food deserts are contributing to the ill health of the community. Loneliness. Let's talk about loneliness. So as you might expect, the people who are the most lonely, that I said all 33 symptoms were rated as more severe, as you might expect. Apathy, anxiety, depression, and fatigue were most strongly associated with loneliness. That makes sense. It's cause and effect. Somebody who has anxiety and apathy is less likely to reach out to friends, and people who experience loneliness, loneliness not having friends is probably more likely to make you feel depressed, anxious, and apathetic. And it's this vicious circle. So again, I am trying to step away from the cause and effect a little bit and just ask, is there something we can do to align ourselves with better outcomes? You know, when I started this study, my joke that I made to myself was a promise to keep an open mind. And I used to joke and say, I don't care if the data says that people who have pet turtles are the people who aren't progressing, whatever it is, they stand on their head each day. They have, you know, I don't care what it is. My advice is going to be, can we find the people who are doing exceptionally well? Can we identify things that they are doing differently than everybody else? And if we teach people to do what the healthy people are doing, will everybody become healthy? Right? That's just kind of my oversimplistic way I'm thinking about this study right now. You know, and I think just on that note, the study design for this entire project was born out of my frustration with people trying to understand the human brain, right? We don't even know you have this disease until you've had it for a decade or two. I mean, we are very slow, very, very, very slow to even recognize this disease. And then we come to the table trying to say, well, as soon as we understand it, then we will find a way to cure it. And what I'm saying is, I don't think we have to understand it to be able to help it. And the example that I like to give is back in the day when 17th century, I think, you know, for scurvy killed, I think 2 million people, over 200. So scurvy, after scurvy killed a couple, it was either 2 or 3 million people. We learned that you could cure scurvy with limes, right? And for 200 years, the entire time that we have known about Parkinson's has been 202 years. So for 200 years, scientists, doctors, sailors prevented, treated, and cured scurvy with limes. And then we discovered vitamin C. And right now what's happening is I couldn't get a grant to give you limes until I discovered vitamin C. First, we want to understand the molecular mechanism, and then we can justify the intervention. And what I'm saying is, I think we are that need to understand the mechanism of action is hurting you. I think it's slowing down science, and I think it's causing negative effects for the patients with this disease, because we don't need to understand why broccoli is helpful. What are the side effects of broccoli? I mean, if this were a very, very, very expensive drug that had really high side effects, then you'd have to weigh what are the risks, what are the benefits. But, you know, for you to say, what is the risk of eating fewer cheeseburgers, right? Like, the risk isn't that high. It maybe for some of you it is. Yeah, I'm going to say we do not need to understand the mechanism of action in order to take action. And there's no right or wrong answer here. Some of you are very nerdy and science-minded and mechanism-based, and you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to continue to eat my yogurt for breakfast, cheese on my sandwich, have a burger for dinner, eat canned tangerines all winter. And I'm going to wait until the scientists come to the table and understand why broccoli is protective. Or you can say, hey, let someone else figure out the mechanism later. Right now, I'm going to follow the behavior of the people who are doing best. They have the same disease as me. And what this data set says is that the people who are thriving with Parkinson's disease 10 years after diagnosis have a lot of friends, they exercise at least 30 minutes a day, every day. They eat a ton of fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, nuts and seeds, non-fried fish, olive oil, coconut oil, wine, fresh herbs and spices. They avoid dairy, beef, pork, chicken, fried foods, soda, bread and pasta. And there are a couple supplements they take too. I'm not going to open that can of worms, but it's glutathione, coenzyme Q10, and fish oil are the 3 supplements that are associated with the best outcomes over time. But that's a whole nother can of worms, and that data will also be published in the next short bit of time. So just watch the Living Healthy with Parkinson's website for that updated data. All right, it's 3:30. I don't know if there are questions. How Not to Die is a great book. Somebody just mentioned that.
We have a lot of
There's a lot.
questions.
Here. We talk you up all the time, and we are super stoked that you're here. Again, thank you so much. Guys, if there's other questions that you have, you can put them in the chat. We will copy them down, and we can chat with Laurie or something for you.
Send them to Laurie.
Yeah, and when she has time. But
I'd like to, if you wouldn't mind, do you know how to use the whiteboard and just put up, I did put it in the chat, some of your links, but some of the best ways for people to get information about you?
So let me show you all before we disappear. Let me show you 3. Let's go back to sharing my screen, and I'm going to show you where to find more.
perfect.
Okay. So you already know the Living Healthy with Parkinson's website is number 1. camcarepd.bastyr.edu is just so you can visually lay your eyes on what this is going to look like.
And just so you know, we also have all of these links on our PD Connect website, so people can find this information if they can't write it down right now.
Yeah, guys, send us an email if you're having troubles finding any of this stuff. If you're freaking out and you want to sign up with Laurie, we're happy to get you connected to do any of those things.
So the 3 websites, this is what it looks like to participate in the study. Here is what you read to learn about the study and learn what you're getting into. And then you go, as soon as you read that, if this sounds like something you want to participate in, you go straight to the online survey and you can just start answering questions right there. My website is lauriemischley.com. And this is a link to most everything I'm doing. I have dogs that smell Parkinson's disease. I'm doing a study of ATP production in muscle at the University of Washington in people with Parkinson's disease. I'm teaching, and this is the online school I was talking about, is all year, this entire year, on the 14th and the 28th of every month, I have been releasing a new class, how to make your meds last longer and work better, how to eat, what labs should I order, do I need supplements, what types of exercise, cannabis, Tai Chi. A lot of the questions that that you had are probably answered in some of those videos. But if you just go to lauriemischley.com is where you can find pretty much links to all of the stuff that I have been working on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. What about your TikTok videos?
my 13-year-old daughter has deleted them all. She says I'm an embarrassment.
Oh no, that's what we got into TikTok. Everyone on most of our people, we do a TikTok video with them, and it's awesome. It's because of you. It's part of our, our
awesome. Well, maybe I'll get my own account. And,
yeah, there you go. Good. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to say? Wrapping things up?
No, we're
oh man, I could spend like the next 4 hours just answering these questions.
I know. There's so many things coming through.
Do you want to leave them on, or?
Well, I mean, how many people are still on? I mean, if 2 people have 10, 15 more minutes, can I get through another?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let me just kind of go through this list a little bit. I love Michael Greger's book, How Not to Die. How do you join your research group? That's that CamCare PD website. If you just type in CamCare PD, it'll come right up on Google. And it's that page I showed you. The Living Healthy with Parkinson's, I hopefully answered that question, where to find those charts and graphs. For the dogs that smell Parkinson's, that is Park 9. That picture is also on there. For those who just don't know what that's about, is as a nutrition person, nutrition is the study of human metabolism. What do we need to source from our environment to make our machinery work well? And so I have known for decades that the Parkinson's I think of as a metabolic disorder. There's something biochemically askew, right, that is causing neurological problems down the road. And so when I learned that there was a woman who could smell Parkinson's disease, I started jumping up and down and I said, of course there is, because this is a metabolic disease. And that day I started looking for dogs that I could train to smell Parkinson's disease. And I found Italian truffle hunting dogs. They're called Lagotto Romagnolo. And they, people send me dirty Q-tips with earwax on it, and the dogs go up and down a track and will signal to the people who have the scent of Parkinson's. It's actually been very helpful to me in the clinic for differentiating Parkinson's from not with a few people. And it's really looking like it's going to be helpful to your children and the people who you know, the next generation of people who might have REM sleep behavior disorder or constipation or carry a certain gene, or they have a parent with Parkinson's and their sense of smell is starting to go. Those are the people who really stand to benefit the most by getting tested early. You know, it's like just say, the example I use is saving for retirement. You know, if you're going to put $500 a month away for retirement, starting when you're 20 is way different than starting when you're 55. And so if you're going to invest in yourself, you're going to change your diet, you're going to start taking tango lessons, you're going to start doing some things differently because you know you have the scent of Parkinson's disease, that $500 a month investment in yourself translates to a lot more over time. The way prevention works is the earlier you get to this, the more impact you can have. And so I really advocate all of you, don't wait until tomorrow, start today. The earlier you get started on your own healthier way of life, the more impact you will have. But I'm really hoping that with these new screening tests, like the dogs and skin biopsies and some of these things that are coming, we will actually be able to get to people who have premotor Parkinson's or prodromal Parkinson's, and they can actually start to influence this disease. And I truly think that we, in the next few years, will be starting to have conversations about, is Parkinson's preventable? No, you don't necessarily. People with Parkinson's do not necessarily have a reduced shorter lifespan. What happens is people tend to be more susceptible to falls or aspiration pneumonia, swallowing difficulties, and things like pneumonia or a fall can cause problems. That's kind of true for all elderly people, and people with Parkinson's tend to be a little more susceptible, but with proper medication and disease management, Parkinson's does not shorten the amount of time you have, which is why we have to take really, really, really good care of ourselves, because most of you are going to be around for a long time. So swimming, I would not call swimming low on the exercise scale, because I truly do think not that many people swim. I think we just don't have enough data. I really think that one of the biggest improvements and changes that we're going to see between the 2020 data set and the 2021 answer key is much better data about exercise. I think we've added something like 100 new questions related to exercise. And so anybody who is curious about what type of exercise, how long, how much, you know, in what environment, it's really, really important to get folks enrolled in that now. Dyskinesia, in that class on making your meds last longer and work better, I have a whole section on how I treat dyskinesia, how I prevent it, what do you do about it. But the short answer is very, very high dose fish oil. There's a very specific type of fish oil called DHA. And there have been a couple studies that show that if you can get about 5 grams of DHA fish oil in per day, you can cut dyskinesia in half within a month. And that is about my clinical experience as well. So that's how I do it in clinic, and those details are discussed in the class and in other lectures, other places. Somebody is talking about starting keto. So there are 2 things I have to say about keto. One is I really do think ketones are great fuel for the brain, right? There's no question that ketones are associated with good outcomes over time. Ketogenic diets are actually quite hard to sustain. Most people who say that they're in ketosis aren't when they actually measure. So you're doing a lot of work thinking that you're in ketosis, and most people actually don't stay in ketosis as much as they would like to believe they do. There's no question that ketogenic diets put you at increased risk of malnutrition. They are associated with weight loss and lack of appetite. They cause anorexia. They make you not so hungry. People who are in ketosis aren't very hungry. And I would actually say that, you know, the foods that people eat on a ketogenic diet look nothing like the foods that are associated with slower Parkinson's progression or prevention of Alzheimer's and that kind of thing. So while I like the principle of flooding the brain with more ketones, I don't see ketogenic diets as being a solution, long-term solution for Parkinson's. I would be afraid of the weight loss and lack of appetite would be more of a problem than the ketogenic diet's benefits would be. But what I would say is there was one very small study done in Australia where they put people on a low-fat diet or a ketogenic diet. And the people who ate the ketogenic diet for, I think it was like a 6-week, 8-week study, had fewer non-motor symptoms, is where they saw the biggest improvement. Oh, thank you for the information about the California Parkinson's Registry. Canned fish will know by 2021. About the organic food, the thing that I want to say there too is if you notice the way I phrased that organic question was I try to eat organically grown foods when possible. I know that it's not always possible to afford organic food. It's not always available. What I was trying to measure is if people are thoughtful and conscious about trying to eat organic, can we see a benefit in that cohort? And that's kind of, I tell people to try, do the best they can. For people who are asking how to account for things like on and off periods. So one of the problems we have with rating scales is the pro-PD, your ability to do this fluctuates a lot over the course of the day. If you just woke up, if your meds are peaking. And so when we designed the pro-PD, we were trying to get away from the fluctuations. So when we ask about the pro-PD, we ask on average, how much of a problem has slowness been in the last week? And there may have been times when it was a terrible problem and periods when it wasn't at all. To the best of your ability, what I would like you to do is just kind of step back and say, on average, how much did slowness bother me this week? 4 out of 10, you know, sometimes a little bit. And that's all we're looking for is do the best that you can. I'm going to say, I do not think that the reason meat is problematic is because of the pesticides. Or I think my personal guess, if I were placing bets, is that grass-fed meat is still going to be problematic. Or organically grown grass-fed meat, I think, is still going to be a little bit problematic. I know I know some people will continue eating it until the data says stop, and that's your prerogative. But I'm going to say that I think that it's just a matter of time before we realize that we should be minimizing our intake of red meat, chicken, and pork. All right, hearing lots of walking counts as exercise, but I'll leave that to the PT experts here. What I tell people in terms of exercise is it has to be physically intense, it has to be cognitively demanding, it has to be outside your comfort zone, and it has to be so difficult that you're screwing up, making mistakes, and getting frustrated. If those things are not true, you are probably not sprouting new neuronal branches. You might be improving your heart health and improving your circulation and doing some things that help your meds work, you know, like there are going to be benefits to all of that stuff. But in Parkinson's disease, if you're asking what is the code for the best response. Like, what exercise can I do that's going to get me the best response over time? I think it has to be physically intense, cognitively demanding, outside your comfort zone, and so difficult you're screwing up and making mistakes.
Yes, 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 yes. We agree.
All right.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, guys. If you are feeling like your brain is on overload, there's so much stuff to learn. What a resource we have right here in front of us. We appreciate you even coming and extending your time. There are so many things that we want to say to you, but thank you is what we're going to keep it at. And so, guys, if you have questions, please send them to us. We'll help you get connected where you need to. Don't freak out. It's going to be okay. All right. So don't stress about it. It went really fast. There's a lot of things to look at. And, but we got like insider scoop on 2021 stuff.
Oh,
like,
really?
This is like e-news.
It is going to be on YouTube.
Yeah, it's PD Connected News. No,
Yeah.
just kidding. Yeah. So this is great.
Start
So
a new segment.
we feel very honored that you are here sharing this
Yes.
stuff with us.
Wow.
Yeah. So cool. Awesome. We do want to say, you know, we ended our exercise class right before this, and we like to end on a positive quote every day. And we took one of the things that you say all the time is that nothing tastes as good as healthy feels. And we just kind of ask everyone to think about that when you're eating your ice cream tonight before bed. Nothing tastes as good as healthy feels. So anyway,
And I stole that quote from The Game Changers, the movie The Game.
Yeah.
No, What the Hell? That's a phrase in What the Hell.
Yeah. So cool. Well, anyway, signing off here. Anything else you want to say, Lise?
No, we just are so thankful. And the work that you do, I always talk, you know, when people ask me, oh, who's Dr. Mischley? I always say, you know, she is the foremost researcher that really looks at the progression of disease. And that's a huge thing. You have disease now. This is the way to go. All right.
Thank you
very much.
Please join the study, you all, please.
Yes, we will keep counting the study.
Yes, we got it.
We're going to get it.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.